Hello everyone, my name is BWampler. I'm in the Communication Theory Comms 520 class at Liberty University, summer of 2016 with Dr. Cliff Kelly. This presentation explores identity formation through a communication theory known as the Communication Theory of Identity, also abbreviated CTI. The theory was formulated by Dr. Michael L. Hecht, a distinguished professor of communication arts and sciences at Pennsylvania State University. This presentation will explain Dr. Hecht's reasoning in developing the theory, the basic principles of the theory, research directions of the theory, some limitations using CTI as a framework, and how CTI is congruent with a biblical worldview. Almost every human being that has ever lived has asked themselves at least once in their lives the deeply philosophical question, who am I? This is an attempt to understand personal identity. Communication scholars believe that identity is constructed through social interaction, and those in the sociocultural tradition believe this and that identity is culturally based. Where the theorists differ concerns whether identity comes through the individual as compared to others, through group interaction, or possibly even through ancestry, as is believed in some African cultures. Dr. Hecht proposed, in developing CTI, that identity is in all three of these at the same time. Dr. Hecht operates from what he calls a dialectical perspective, stating that all of social life has polarities and contradictions, and theory is often ambiguous. Dr. Hecht thinks this is not necessarily incorrect, and that two or more components of an idea can coexist at the same time in what he terms layers or tiers, even if they're contradictory or juxtaposed. CTI identifies the following dimensions of identity: thoughts, actions, feelings, a spiritual dimension, a subjective dimension, which is how we see ourselves, and an ascribed dimension, which is how others see us. These dimensions are categorized into four frames of identity. The frames are the personal, or how we perceive ourselves, the enacted, how we express ourselves, the relational, how we interact socially, and the communal, which is group perception, expression, and interaction or group analysis. The four frames are interpenetrated. They can be viewed separately for analysis, but they are interconnected and function jointly, even when they're contradictory or juxtaposed. When an incongruity occurs between them, Dr. Hecht and his colleagues termed this an identity gap. An example of an identity gap occurs between the personal and the relational frames often, because how a person sees himself can be sharply contrasted with how others see them. I think we see this often in life. We think differently of ourselves until somebody lets us know a different perspective. Areas of research using CTI have focused on culture and ethnicity, interpersonal relationships, and health identity and health messaging. In studies on ethnicity and culture, researchers looked at the experiences of international students in America, Jewish American identity as portrayed on certain television shows, experiences of immigrants in the U.S., and identity construction and emergence in the LGBTQ community. I think the researchers might have had a lot of fun looking at Jewish American identity as portrayed on television because they did so using a show called Northern Exposure that aired in the 1990s. It was humorous and intelligently written, and if you ever have a chance to watch Northern Exposure on Netflix, I think you should. You'll enjoy it. The studies on ethnicity and culture found that groups find significant meaning in cultural labels and classifications. Also, that identity has many gradations. A final finding was that communication is integrated with identity and is not just an outcome of it. In the studies on interpersonal relationships, researchers looked at the grandparent-grandchild dyad, particularly with young adult grandchildren. They also looked at stepfather identity and the identity emergence and its effect on personal relationships for always single Japanese women. The term always single is significant because in the Japanese culture, to remain unmarried, for a woman to remain unmarried, is against cultural expectations. These studies found that identity gaps exist in a variety of interpersonal relationships. that identities are emergent or change over time, and that changes in relationships greatly affect personal identity. The idea is that we have a core identity, but our experiences in life, particularly with other people, can affect and cause changes to our personal identity. In studies on health identity and health messaging, researchers looked at how health issues affect self-perception. They also looked at cultural expectations and cultural differences in the medical interview process, and how cultural identity plays a part in how we receive health messages in public health awareness campaigns. The studies found that there are identity gaps occur related to illness. For example, how we perceive our own health compared to our actual health. Think of someone in denial after a particular diagnosis, or someone with the condition of hypochondria. The studies also found that there were changes in the enactment layer related to illness. An example might be a breast cancer survivor might participate in fundraising or awareness activities that she had not done so prior to her battle with and survival of breast cancer. Cultural identity also affects communication in health settings. Think about a language barrier between a patient and a provider, or how cultural expectations might cause that interview process to be different. Finally, different cultural expectations make receiving health messages differently. In a culture where the individual is valued, health messages were found to be received better when they came from a person that could be related to. Whereas in a culture where the group is more valued, health messages were better received if they were communicated in a story about the group. So that was interesting. There were two recurring themes throughout all the research. One is that identity and communication are integrated. And the other is that the enacted identity, the ability to express oneself, or the opportunity to express oneself, is correlated with better outcomes than the relational identity, or what others think of us, particularly with depression in international students as an example. If they felt they could express who they really were, it was more valuable to them than the opinions of the host culture. Some limitations to using CTI lie in its multifaceted composition. The researchers found that it was difficult to focus on all of the aspects of CTI. Most of them either focused on the 4 frames of identity, or on the layers and tiers, or on the identity gaps, not all together. Another challenge is dialectic thought. It can be difficult for people to have juxtaposed ideas. And the third thing is that the theory can seem nebulous and abstract. Parts of it seem vague and undefined. Still, I think Heck's idea in formulating CTI is valuable. He states that he views realms of human experience or identity as like tides in the ocean. They each have distinct characteristics, and yet they're all part of one ocean. I found this congruent with the idea of the Trinity. In Genesis 1:26, it says, "Let us make man in our own image," suggesting a plural identity. In addition, Deuteronomy 6:4 said, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one." And in John 10:30, Jesus said, "I and the Father